If you had to ask me what the hardest sell is for Mystara, I would tell you the silly phase. TSR got goofy with a ton of lighthearted adventures and supplements designed to make you laugh, give you something to throw at the kiddos, and of course take the piss out of Gary Gygax out of spite. Looking at you, Castle Greyhawk. Mystara was no exception. In fact, we got products that fell victim to the silly phase more than any other setting save maybe Spelljammer. When you had the immortal Jim Holloway as a staff artist, it was difficult not to get silly. His paranoia art is one of the reasons why the game is such a classic. But when you've got one incredibly Silly Nation book in a line of not Silly Nation books, it can put some people off. That's the case of the Orcs of Thar. But is it too silly? Can it be salvaged for a serious campaign? I'm Mr. Welch, welcome to Mystara, and let's not go to the Broken Lands. It is a silly place. The Broken Lands are one of the only books in the Gazetteer line not named after the nation it represents, with only the Shadow Elves also copying the naming pattern. Instead, it talks about the big bad Bone Daddy who rules over the Broken Lands, the Orc King Thar. He's one of the biggest, nastiest, and meanest villains in all of the known world, commanding legions of humanoids in his dreams of world conquest. All that stands in his way is the fact that most of his troops hate each other and are more than happy to fight amongst each other rather than the humans at their borders. That's why he has to play the nasty drill sergeant far too often. Might as well jump straight into the silly parts of the Broken Lands. There is a huge chunk of this book that stands out from the other nations just from the names alone. You've got humanoid regions called Bugburbia, Hobgoblins, Trollhättan, and Nolistan. There are regions for the orcs, kobolds, ogres, and goblins that fortunately get less humorous names. If you want to keep these and have a reason for the silliness, best reason I've heard for the names is that a Thaetian cartographer was charting the area and just gave them silly names because he was lazy and the land was so hostile that nobody would be visiting it anyways. There is a bit of precedence with that, with Haldemar complaining about the original map of Brune and how incorrect it was. Same principle, different cartographer. Or maybe it's the same cartographer. The actual names for the regions are much less silly, but the common tongue stuck with the original names. The Broken Lands hammer home the fact that humanoids and humans and demi-human races don't get along at all. Humanoids were created specifically by immortals using evil souls that were reincarnated into the beastmen, before they evolved into their current forms. The rules as written cut the charisma of humanoids in half when dealing with humans and demi-humans, and vice versa. Humanoids are naturally evil because that's how they were designed. Back when they were just the beastmen, they were some of the most awful sentient creatures in their past lives. After multiple reincarnations, a humanoid might be able to change its ways, but that's still a very rare occasion. It's not like they have a reason to change. They were promised by their immortals that they would conquer the known world. All they have to do is enslave or kill all the other races. You get rewarded by your religion for your brutality and treachery, and then evil sounds good. I'm not saying humanoids are mindless creatures without freedom of choice. I'm just saying their version of mercy is lifelong enslavement over death. They have a different set of values, with a mindset that can be alien to non-humanoids. Remember that when the paladin him-haws over the fate of the goblin children, and then have them shank him with their art project knives, just like their dad taught them. The history of the Broken Lands is both scattered and brief. It has a lot of groups that were driven into the area after one quest or another, and settling down because it was the safest location they could find. Starting in 2000 BC, the beastmen evolved into the recognizable humanoid forms that we have today. The first great Orc Warlord is King Lork, who conquers Norworld, a good chunk of the Northern Reaches, and some other places. After him arises Aquila Khan, a hobgoblin near future Ethengar. They are both on a quest to find a magical artifact called the Blue Knife, and both ravage across the continent trying to find this sacred weapon. King Lork finds the Broken Lands and settles it, but dies before his quest is finished. Lacking a strong leader, the horde quickly fragments. Aquila Khan is betrayed by Ethengar, who he allied with, and is forced to retreat from Ethengar into the Broken Lands. Other races soon follow. Trolls arrive from Vestland after having gotten completely lost on the way home. Ogres from Sin join the others in the Broken Lands, leaving their homeland because of a terrible drought. The orc tribe called the Wogar arrive from the ruins of the Blackmoor region, following the prophecies of their great shaman. They settle to the south of the Broken Lands near the Etrugan and begin mimicking their ways. Gnolls appear after the destruction of Nithia. Goblins and kobolds are driven from Rockholm after the Battle of Sardal Pass and grab what's left. The hordes unite under Chief Sitting Drool. See, there it gets silly again. Assume this is a nickname given to him by Darrican to belittle him. Anyways, Sitting Drool besieges Cornglain 3 times before finally sacking it, but on the way home he gets captured. The orcs pay for his release with a huge fortune, but on his way home he's killed by adventurers. Again, the horde breaks up. Thar reunites the humanoids in 975, but he's smart enough to realize that without discipline the horde is doomed to defeat again. So for the last 25 years he's been whipping them into shape. When he decides they are ready to be an army, then he unleashes the legion against Darrican, not a minute sooner. Just about every humanoid of any significant number is found in the Broken Lands, with 3 tribes of orcs alone. The Orcs of Mystara assimilate the tactics of their foes. The more powerful the foe, the more they get copied. Orcs will often dress up as their enemies, complete with face paint to try to match the skin tone of their opponent. Red Orcs copy the style of the Etruscan clans, relying on stealth and maneuverability rather than brute strength. They're notorious for using war paint to try to make themselves look more intimidating. Yellow Orcland is the home to the Yellow Orcs, naturally. These are the descendant of Aquila Khan's original horde. They copy the Ethengar, so wolf riders abound in their forces. Instead of war paint, they get their skin tone through a heavy diet of swamp plants, which abound in their area, but does leave them looking jaundiced. They're one of the more active tribes, with constant raids into Ethengar to maintain their warlike nature. Black Orcs are the largest of the Orc tribes and the most powerful of all the humanoid tribes in general. They call themselves Orcus Rex because of their standing as the most important tribe in the Broken Lands, but others call them the Black Orcs because of their uniforms. They are, without a doubt, the most disciplined of the humanoid tribes, having been drilled to perfection by Thar himself. They are the most important clan in the Broken Lands, something that they're proud of. Mystara and Kobolds are mammalian, not draconic. They even have the scientific name of Canis Minor, and yes, all the races have scientific names. Kobolds are known for being nervous little creatures, only brave in numbers and highly susceptible to rabies. There's not much information given on them outside the fact that they're dangerous in large numbers and they breed quickly. If you want to make them stand out, make them the mad scientist of Mystara. Nothing arcane, nothing complicated, but more like Wile E. Coyote and Acme products. Most of their strange gear was stolen from the gnomes, with cheap knockoffs recreated by the kobolds. Things like glider suits, small-scale siege engines, or explosives. Mystaran bugbears aren't the sneaky, stealthy goblin types in other settings. Instead, more than any other humanoid tribe, they believe in might makes right. They believe their larger size makes them superior to other humanoids, and they suffer from constant leadership changes, as when a leader appears weak, he is immediately challenged by multiple contenders. Eventually he gets worn down by the non-stop challengers and a new chief will emerge, only for the cycle to repeat almost immediately. As you can imagine, this does not make them Thar's favorite troops. Mystara and goblins are not the cute, big-eyed comic relief that have taken over the other settings. These goblins are short, squat, deformed, and usually plotting your murder. Goblins are what you get when the humanoids interbreed too often. They are often a mix of different racial features, anything from being over-muscled like an ogre but still only being 3 feet tall, having the face of a kobold, or having a shaggy coat like a gnoll. They are quite numerous, only outnumbered by the kobolds. They aren't cute with big eyes, they more resemble the goblins from Labyrinth, only with multiple convictions for felony assault and a dire need for an STD test. Gnolls in the Broken Lands were driven out of Karamikos, but keep their Nithian trappings. Mystara and gnolls were a magical creation designed to follow the Nithians' instructions and being their elite shock troops. The problem was, without Nithians giving them orders, the gnolls started to lash out at anyone they saw. Without strong leadership, gnolls have a tendency for madness. Thar's Legion does help them with their madness somewhat, but they still have to be kept under watch. It doesn't help that the patron immortal of gnolls is also the patron of insanity. Ogres in the Broken Land are actually much more intelligent and behaved than the typical ogre you find in the wild. It doesn't hurt that they were originally raised in Sin to serve as elite troops for the Pasha, and some of that training was passed down to their ancestors. They aren't going to be learning magical spells anytime soon, or writing poems, but they can at least follow orders and come up with coherent plans. Hobgoblins in Mystara are probably the closest to what they are normally in 5th edition. They believe themselves better than goblins, and they are a lot better organized and well led. However, they also believe in racial superiority, and they will cut down anybody that stands up to them because, of course, hobgoblins believe themselves superior to all other races. Lastly, the trolls of the Broken Lands are pretty much the trolls you find in every D&D setting. Big, green, hungry, stupid, hard to kill. To get their cooperation, all you have to do is beat them into submission, a difficult task because of their regeneration abilities. They're quite dumb, which is both a plus and a minus for Thar. He can trick them into performing dangerous tasks, but any commands more complicated than immediate violence confuses them. The Legion is the best chance the humanoids have at threatening the other nations with any real menace. Thar has a large number of troops, tens of thousands, but compared to the highly organized forces of Darrican, Glantry, or Ethengar, they're little more than an unruly mob. An army with no discipline has little chance on the battlefield no matter how many they have. So Thar decided to copy the most powerful military in the continent, the Empire of Theatis. He is trying to get the normally chaotic humanoids to march in formation, follow a battle plan, and coordinate with their individual talents. Whether this plan is a fool's errand remains to be seen. Browbeating goblins to stand in a line while much larger orcs are charging at them is easy. Getting them to stand in a line when they are about to be trampled by a charge of Karamekan heavy cavalry is another thing entirely. Throw in the fact that many of the tribes absolutely hate each other and will not hesitate to turn on one another if left unsupervised, and it's no wonder Thar has been trying to get his legion together for 25 years now. The Orcs of Thar introduced us to the concept of the world below. This is the geological unstable area of Mystara where you're going to find the subterranean races, though it's not going to have vast trade routes or dozens of cities waiting to be explored. There's 2 cities in the world below of any considerable size, with a few minor ones in areas that are stable enough to live in without fear of earthquakes, poison gas eruptions, or a lava flow interrupting your morning coffee. When you think of the world below, imagine it as the Underdark, only with rabies. Above ground, the Broken Lands are the textbook definition of inhospitable. The surface is arid, with little vegetation outside of marsh plants. Water is only available where the Vesuvian and Streel rivers run through the land, through canyons that offer little in the way of access. The ground is also notoriously unstable, with sinkholes, geysers, and quicksand common hazards, making overland travel treacherous. Temperatures spike at well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in most of the region in every season except winter. All in all, you really don't want to be above ground in the Broken Lands. Below ground is where the vast majority of the humanoids live. The water that seeps from the marshes and rivers above are filtered through rock, which makes it safer to drink than surface water. Large mushroom forests feed the teeming populations, though the humanoids prefer hunting creatures for meat. Finding a new stable cavern in the world below is a great discovery, one that brings warriors from most of the tribes to claim the new cavern for their own. The tougher tribes tend to have spacious areas to call home, while the weaker races like Kobolds and Goblins live in cramped dwellings as the best caverns have long been claimed by the orcs or bugbears. When a cavern is destroyed by a collapse or poisoned by an eruption of toxic fumes, the entire tribe has to leave their home and try to find a new camp. This has led to numerous wars in the past. The 2 largest settlements in the world below is the City of Stars, home to the Shadow Elves, and Oinkmar. The City of Stars is covered in depth with the Shadow Elves book. Oinkmar is currently occupied by humanoids. It's a legend in the Broken Lands, a city magically floating on a lake of lava, occupied and run by orcs, but lost to time and never seen by anyone living. The legend is true. The city does float on a lake of lava, but the lake also has several waterfalls that constantly pour into it. The waterfalls evaporate before they hit the lake, so it creates a massive wall of steam that obscures the view of the city. The humanoids inside the city believe they built it, but like much of their history, the facts are lost to time. Oinkmar was originally Angmar, built by the Shadow Elves as they fled the Glantrian Cataclysm. They built the underground city in 1352 BC. A small group of them started worshipping Azanthiotl because he promised them vengeance on the hated humans. However, the number of cultists were small and he wanted more followers. So he flooded the cavern with poison gas and drove the few survivors out of the city. A century later, he used his power to open up a shaft to a higher section of the world below and drove the city upwards on a pillar of lava where it was discovered by orcs. They found a common elven sacrificial dagger, but believed this to be the mythical blue dagger. Then the orcs were discovered by Nithians, who started trading with them and also interfering with Azanthiotl's plans. So he dropped the city back into the lake of lava and conveniently killed off all but his followers. Oinkmar has completely forgotten its elven origins. It's an organized city, but dominated by the worship of Azanthiotl. The humanoids don't even know that other immortals even exist. They get around on flying lizards and magic, allowing them to leave their city and raid unsuspecting victims. The city is run similar to the Atslan or Tiger Clan. Prisoners are used as slaves or more commonly sacrificed on the Great Pyramid. The Oinkmarians consider themselves superior to their humanoid cousins, as they are illiterate and have a stable economy. They speak an archaic form of Elven, and all their coinage was originally minted by the elves centuries ago. But the orcs believe their ancestors were the ones responsible for the entire city. Even suggesting the elves created Oinkmar is enough to get you on the sacrificial altar. The priesthood will not brook even the slightest challenge to their version of events. Few humanoids venture below the safer caverns in the world below. Hundreds of miles beneath them is the Hollow World, but that place is unknown to the humanoids. The biggest threats in the world below that isn't naturally occurring are the numerous monsters that inhabit the deepest caverns. There are rumors of a city of Deep Glorants, who no one has ever seen and lived. How the rumors got out about the Deep Glorant city, if no one has ever come back alive, remains unexplained. The world below is also the hunting ground of the Ostigos, earthquake beetles, and nightshades. Needless to say, venturing into the deeper part of the world below is best avoided. Again, Mystaran humanoids tend to be evil by default. They are the reincarnated souls of the worst after all. But they do have a free will of sorts. Their cultures have evolved into a survival of the fittest with varying degrees of organization. Kobolds organize themselves into a sort of republic, though the High Doge takes the definition of republic to mean
He gets to decide which votes get counted. Orcs value strength and success. An orc chief that keeps losing battles will find himself assassinated no matter how big he is. Some humanoids have broken away from their kin and developed different views on life, like the Gnolls of Gricalia or the Orcs of Alfheim. But these are the outliers. Most humanoids are the definition of evil. It also doesn't hurt that the patron immortals of humanoids reward these traits, and questing for immortality means you're going to be undertaking some seriously unwholesome quests. The Orcs of Thar bring up the possibility of half-orcs, which goes against the lore of other books, but Angus McClintock is definitely part orc regardless of the continuity problems. However, his rules are that of a standard human mage. So here's a workaround to smooth out that problem. 95% of the time, humanoid and human or demi-human offspring are unfeasible. 4% of the time, the child will be born with severe defects both mentally and physically, and probably won't live to see adulthood. The remaining 1% follow the mixed race rules, with the same-sex parent dictating the race of the child. So Angus McClintock appears to be an orc, despite his human heritage. The half-orc is treated exactly as the apparent race and can breed normally within that species. However, crossbreeding again results in rolling on the humanoid compatibility chart. In the end, Thar's legions might be too much trouble than it's worth. His army as it stands is 20,000 strong. While that might be enough to overwhelm the border garrisons in Darrican, it's not enough to get very far into the nation before Darrican can mount a full defense. Thar's ultimate goal is the sack of Rockholm, which he isn't going to do with that many troops. Rockholm's borders are bottlenecks, and their fortresses are designed to break armies against them. Thar is being pressured by numerous outside sources to keep building his army, and he's afraid of what happens when he fails. But the threats of the various power players behind Thar are worse than just dying on the battlefield. Orcs of Thar does offer you the chance to play humanoids, but why would you? They tend to be brutish, ill-tempered, and uneducated. But it still would be fun to play a campaign of them on a lark. The Beckme rules invoke the negative experience, so you have to earn about 32,000 experience points to play a troll, before you have all the troll abilities and hit points, meaning a first-level troll is the equivalent of a 7th-level kobold. 5th edition has several rules for various races, though you have to take into account that 5th edition does not do large playable races at all. So there's no ogres and no trolls. Mystara and Gnolls and Kobolds are radically different from the Forgotten Realms versions. Also, Faerun goblins don't have to visit the late-night clinic for a shot as often as the Mystaran goblins. That concludes the Orcs of Thar remaster. If you want to play it silly as written, that's well within your rights, of course. If you want to play it serious with the humanoids posing an actual threat, that's how I presented this region in the remaster. It's your game, your rules. Next book to be remastered is The Republic of Darrican, as I'm in the final stretch for the Gazetteers, and then I only have to do 30 more remasters of modules and crucibles. Is Darrican the Merry Zootopia as it's been described? Well, stay tuned, but until then, remember, monsters we are, lest monsters we become.